What's up, guys? So I'm Alex, I'm with BFE Adventures, and today I want to talk about how off-roadable is this Africa Twin. So if you're looking at potentially getting one or looking into the adventure bike segment in general, and you don't have any idea of how effective these bikes can be off-road, I want to shed a little light on that. So during the course of this video, I'm going to patch in a bunch of clips of us riding them, and you'll be able to compare a little bit based on what you see. But let's just start by the cold hard facts, okay? This is a 500 plus pound adventure bike, okay? I think wet weight on it is arguably around 510 pounds, somewhere around there. This is a 2017 model. The newer ones, I believe, are a little heavier, but it's negligible as far as rider feel unless you're a pro rider. I am not, so I will give you my thoughts on it based on my skill level, okay? I would consider myself maybe like a B-class rider. I've been riding for, I don't know, probably 20 years or better. But big bikes like this, I've been riding big adventure bikes for probably close to 10 years now. But anyway, that's irrelevant. Anyway, I want to explain kind of how these things perform off-road. Okay, so I will compare it as well while I'm explaining this compared to some of the other bikes that I've ridden to give you a better idea of what to expect. So if you're looking at potentially buying one of these, I can give you a better insight. So all of this is I'll preface all of this by saying I absolutely love this bike. It's an incredible road bike, but I'm actually looking at potentially downsizing to something a little more off-road capable because I want to go a little more aggressively off-road. So there are limits to this. You see the videos that some of the main producers put out of these things and commercials showing these things doing ridiculous off-road stuff. And don't get me wrong, there's people out there that absolutely slay it and ride these things like trials bikes. But most of us are not like that. I am not like that. And so I want to give you a realistic expectation of what these things are capable of. So with the Africa Twin, the cool part about it to start off is traction control. It's got 3 levels of traction control on this 2017 model. It's very easy to control compared to the newer one. I know there's a lot more buttons you got to hit to do that. This one is literally just a trigger that you change the traction control on. So it's very intuitive, very easy. Same with the ABS. There's just a button right up here on the dash that you just hold the button for 3 seconds and it turns the ABS off to the rear wheel, which is super useful. You cannot turn the ABS off to the front wheel. So if you want to do stoppies on this bike, I don't know, you have to figure something out, but you can't do that on the factory setup. I will not. So going back to its capabilities. So off-road, gravel roads, any adventure bike's going to do a gravel road just fine, way better than a sport bike or anything like that, street-oriented for that matter. This thing is perfectly comfortable flying down a gravel road at 55 miles an hour, no problem. You know, when you get into the big loamy rocks or like sandy stuff, obviously you're going to have to slow down. It's a 500-pound bike. You're not going to slow it down very quickly. But gravel roads, that's a no-brainer. Now, as we continue to get more and more off-road is when I'll try and make it a little more apparent what you're going to sacrifice on a bike this big. So when you get to more like double track, let's say side-by-side trails, stuff like that, for the most part, you can fly right through it just like you would in any other bike. The suspension on this stock from the factory is extremely soft, okay? This has aftermarket Olin suspension on it. It is incredible. But even with this extremely well dialed in suspension, no matter what, it's not going to keep up with a 500-pound bike pounding bumps and rocks. So I have bottomed this out multiple times. I've taken it on a motocross track and smoked it off the ground. So it definitely will bottom. You will find the bottom of it if you ride even semi-aggressively. So that being said, when you get into rocky stuff is where you're really going to find you're going to run into some problems. Now, This has a 21-inch front wheel, which is great. It helps you roll over logs, little logs, stuff like that. Maybe I'll patch in a video here. You can see we've jumped some pretty considerable logs with this thing. And as long as you get the front tire lofted, this thing tracks right over it. So a lot of the off-road stuff you will encounter, a lot of it's going to depend on the rider ability. Okay, you are not going to be able to jump on this if you have no experience with an adventure bike at all. You would be really silly or scared to try and jump this thing over a big log. So keep that in mind. This is not designed to run single track. Now, we have run single track before, and I've run single track on this thing. And the best way I can describe it is exhausting. It will do it plenty good, but it's not going to run single track like my KTM 300 would, or, you know, it's not designed for that. So if you think that your riding is going to be primarily all off-road, then you need to be looking at more of a dual sport. It's just not reasonable. Now, where I live, a lot of my riding buddies, they all ride about 2 hours away from me, hour and a half, 2 hours. So for me, it's great to be able to jump on the highway and run 75 miles an hour for an hour or two and be totally comfortable and ready to roll when I get to the trail to ride with them. So that's why this has been great up until now. We take these trips and bring you guys on tours all over the country, and we've done trips where we ride out of here, out of the Midwest. We're located near St. Louis. And so like when we would do Tennessee rides, we'd just ride all the way to Tennessee and North Carolina. Or, you know, a couple years ago, we rode all the way to Colorado. And that is where this thing shines, because you can get there and just hit the dirt when you get there, and it's great. But you can't expect to hit technical trails on it all day long. It's not reasonable. It's exhausting. And after you pick this thing up 4 or 5 times in the morning, you don't really feel like doing something too aggressive in the afternoon. So just know that. To compare it to some other bikes off-road, I'll just give you what my experience is with some of the other bikes that I've had. So let's start with the smallest ones, and that's like a KLR 650. In my opinion, as long as you don't mind crashing it, this thing is just as capable off-road as my KLR 650 was. In fact, I think I'm more competent off-road with this than I was with the KLR. The power is unbelievably better. Obviously, the road characteristics are way better. And you can feel the heft. I will say it definitely feels heavier than the KLR, but the way that it's balanced and the power delivery just makes it more capable off-road. So, in my opinion, okay. Moving up to something bigger, let's go with like, I have not ridden the KTM 890. I've ridden with plenty of them to compare that. And I will say, if you've watched any YouTube videos, you know that the 890 is unbelievably more off-road capable than the Africa Twin. Especially the new 890 is incredible. 790s, those are just great. Now, as you guys know, Pogo has or had, he just sold it, an 1190 KTM. I would say off-road, they're very comparable. The 1190 feels more like a dirt bike. You're sitting more on top of it. The Africa Twin, you feel more like you're sitting in it. But other than that, they both feel very light on their feet for what they are off-road. Moving up even bigger, I had a Tenere 1200. This thing is just night and day difference. There's a bigger front wheel. It just rolls over things better. The Tenere's got a 19-inch front. Tenere 1200 has a 19-inch front, and it's just not, it's not in the same category off-road. It's just not. Moving up even bigger, I had a BMW R1200 GS. Comparing this to the GS, on-road, obviously the GS will outshine this any day, but off-road is where the differences are very apparent just in overall rider confidence. Like when we come up to a hill or we come up to a big valley, pardon me, or a creek or something like that, that looks semi-formidable to a big 500-pound adventure bike, where in the past I was a little hesitant with the GS, this thing I wouldn't even think twice. when we all ride in a big group together and we come up to something that we're all kind of looking down in this big hole, or we're looking up at this big hill wondering, okay, who's going to go first? With the BMW, I was not typically the person that would volunteer to go first. With the Africa Twin, I will go first anytime because the confidence is just fantastic. So if you're not hitting massive big rocks and you're not hitting mud or deep sand, and you have some pavement to hit, it would be really hard, in my opinion, to find a better bike than the Africa Twin. It's an incredible bike. It's extremely comfortable. We also have CB500Xs in our stable. Those are little bikes. I absolutely love them. They're a riot. Not even in the same category as the Africa Twin, though. I mention them just to say, like, for road bias and stuff and overall commuting during the summer, honestly, I'd just as soon jump on the 500 as I would the Africa Twin because nothing shines on this thing on the road. But for me, I have heated grips on it. It's got better wind protection, all kinds of stuff like that. So all winter, I'm going to be riding this thing. But when it comes to the dirt, if you're looking to get into more single track, or you're just looking to explore places that you may come across something that would be a little formidable, then you may want to look at something a little smaller, because there are times that I take this, if I'm out going solo somewhere, I'm going to be a lot more hesitant to go somewhere that I've never been on this if I'm by myself, just in the offhand chance that I need help getting this thing out of something. I can pick this up all day long. That's not a problem. But trying to pull it out of a hole or get it up a hill whenever it falls over, something like that, and I'm by myself, it's just a chore. And so I would say if you're going to be doing a lot of technical stuff or things that you don't know what's coming, this probably isn't the bike for you if you're riding solo. That's just me being honest. In my last video explaining the Africa Twin and just talking the do's or don'ts on whether or not you should buy one, I've had plenty of comments on people saying, you know, I wouldn't pick that thing up. It's not off-road capable, blah, blah, blah. Not that I'm not poo-pooing on those people, but honestly, I think if you think that this can't go off-road at all, it's either due to rider skill or just inability to pick the thing up multiple times. But in my opinion, this is not a heavy bike to pick up compared to some of the other ones that I've had. I can show you some videos of us trying to pick up Cody's GS multiple times. That bike is exhausting to pick up. This doesn't go down near as much, for one, and two, it's easier to pick up. So I would not say that this thing is not off-road capable. It is 100% capable of going off-road. It just depends on what level. Like, if you think that you would be more comfortable riding on some of those trails on a 450 or 500 or just a more dual sport oriented bike, and that's what you're going to spend 70% of your time on, then there's not really any sense spending the extra money to get such a big adventure bike. You can get smaller bikes that do everything so much better. If you're talking about, if you're going to have a bunch of time with a passenger, well, then you're going to have to get some kind of a big adventure bike instead of a dual sport. And if that's the case, then I don't know if there's a better bike than this. You can get a couple of the newer options. The Desert X is available now. I know that's an incredible road bike that could probably handle 2-up just fine. The Tiger 900 would be good at that. The KTM 1190 would be good at that, or 1290. Those would be good bikes for those options, the Norden 901. But as far as just a great bike to thrash around in the woods that isn't overly expensive, heck, you can pick these up all day long for around 10 grand now. I'm selling this one right now for less than that. I don't think if you're trying to get in the adventure bike market and you need a big bore adventure bike, it would be really hard for you to find one better than this off-road for the price. If you're looking for an on-road bike, honestly, I think you'd be better off getting a 1200 GS. They're just a better road bike in every way, and they're more comfortable, more wind buffeting, or more wind deflection, but again, off-road, it would be really hard for you to get a bike this big that's that good. So I hope that answers some of your questions. If you have any other questions about certain scenarios, by all means, just throw them in the comments below. I'd be happy to answer them. But I hope that sheds a little light on the off-road ability of the Africa Twin. Take care, guys.